jazz. Where did it come from? Let's dive in to the origin story. Hello, welcome to Knowledgeica. My name is Danny Ward and this is the show about anything and everything. Jazz is an interesting genre of music filled with unique and complex sounds, but it has an even more unique and complex history. Jazz as we know it is often considered to be a fusion of American, European and African music styles which emerged in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. In the late 1800s, many African people were unfortunately purchased and brought over predominantly from the slave merchants of West and Central Africa. This was a part of the dreadful Atlantic slave trade. Over time, these individuals would gather socially and enjoy making, listening and dancing to Creole music in a place known as Congo Square, a market in New Orleans. Back in the French and Spanish colonization of Louisiana, enslaved Africans were, by some owners, given Sunday off. There were anti-congregation laws at the time, and so large gatherings were usually discouraged. Despite this, however, Congo Square often had many African music-based festivals, as this was considered an acceptable and permitted gathering place by the lawmakers of the time. It was also an opportunity and space for enslaved individuals to earn money in order to purchase their freedom, a practice present during French reign. Here slaves of African descent would make music with whatever they could get their hands on. Washboards, boxes and washtubs were all popular choices. While similar congregations and festivals did occur in other regions in the southern United States, Congo Square is often considered one of the most important for the formation of what we now know as jazz. Over time, the African-inspired expression-based folk music of Congo Square blended with the harmonies and instruments often associated with many European classical waltz and marching swing songs. It really started to develop its own style, so much so that many people would travel to New Orleans to listen to and watch these music makers after the completion of the Louisiana Purchase and its integration into the United States. Over the next few hundred years, this emerging style of new music would continue to grow and develop. With the abolition of slavery in 1865, this new music style, by which point had solidified itself as ragtime, really saw a popularity boom. With many musically talented African American ragtime enthusiasts able to seek work in the entertainment industry of the time, this music style was able to flourish. At the same time, soul-filled folk ballads originated from African American communities of the Deep South started to rise in prominence. These ballads would go on to form the foundations for blues music. Ragtime and blues are often seen as the immediate precursors to jazz. By the turn of the 20th century, a new ragtime blues fusion was starting to become all the rage in small entertainment venues, bars and the like, particularly in New Orleans. Back in 1917, jazz made the big leap. The first jazz song recording took place for a song called Livery Stable Blues by the original Dixieland jazz band. And that was jazz with a double S rather than a double Z. Back then, the word jazz and its association to the jazz music we know today took a surprisingly complex route. So much so that it is named Word of the 20th Century by the American Dialect Society. The word jazz only started to refer to what we know as jazz music in 1915 Chicago. Other variations of the spelling include J-A-S, J-A-Z and J-A-S-Z. It grew quite organically, twisting and turning as different people presented their interpretation of the spelling. The true origin is still quite a mystery, which has left many academic researchers scratching their heads in deep thought. The best candidate for the precursor to the word jazz stems from the similar word jasm. This is an old school term that fell out of favour. It's a word that embodies and describes energy and vigour. The word jazz wasn't solely used to describe the music, however. In fact, the word came first and latched onto the music. By the turn of the 20th century, jazz was very much the cool new word of the time, originating from West Coast USA. It was a highly descriptive adjective and had a myriad of potential uses. Give it more jazz. It was also a popular term in baseball, although different people and different regions would use it in a slightly different way. The meaning was very much contextual. Spirit, life, pep, enthusiasm, showiness, and also just complete nonsense were some of the popular meanings behind the word. It was only by around 1915 that the term jazz was starting to be associated with the music. When advertising these hip, peppy, energetic blues bands, well, what better word to use than jazz? Who was the very first person to refer to this style of music as jazz, though? That we have no real concrete answer for. A Californian musician, Bert Kelly, led the band Bert Kelly's Jazz Band back in 1914, and so serves as a strong leading candidate. Musician Tom Brown made claims that he was part of a jazz band, spelled double S, back in 1915. Both of these, however, are hard to verify. Were there people who beat them to it, but they were lost to history? Quite possibly, and most likely. One such source of contention was from Jelly Roll Morton. Morton claimed he was the true inventor of jazz. Even today, many people still see the song Jelly Roll Blues as the first published jazz record. Morton did stir up a lot of resentment at the time with the claims, with many seeing him as egotistical, while others supported his plight, suggesting that he was the butt of much unfair reporting. Either way, he was a pivotal figure in the history of jazz, and certainly was one of the earliest prolific contributors in recorded jazz media, at the very least. The early style of jazz was known as Dixieland. It wasn't until Louis Armstrong came onto the scene did we really start to see what we now know as modern-day jazz, filled with improvisation. Louis Daniel Armstrong, nicknamed as Satchmo, Satch and Pops, was born on the 4th of August 1901 in New Orleans, Louisiana. His mother, Mary Albert, gave birth at the young age of 16, while his father, William Armstrong, left soon after. This resulted in Louis being raised by his grandmother until age 5, where Mother Mary Albert took over. Throughout his childhood, Armstrong faced poverty and struggle. This resulted in taking odd jobs here and there for cash. One such job was as a coal seller in the red light district of Storyville, New Orleans. This would be the start of it all. Here, Louis Armstrong was able to listen to the early sounds of jazz in local dance halls and brothels. Armstrong rose into prominence during the 1920s, often playing either a characteristic trumpet or cornet. Over the next few decades, his unique improvisational take on jazz would change the genre forever. Jazz evolved over the next few decades with new styles emerging. Chicago, Kansas City, New York, and the West Coast began to stand next to New Orleans as jazz hubs in their own right. Big band, bebop, freeform, fusion, contemporary, modal, progressive, cool, swing, and hard bop styles all began to emerge over the years, along with many others. I could probably go on for hours about this. Jazz has such a rich and interesting history, but we gotta stop somewhere. This is only a short video. So my question to you for the comments, what is your favourite jazz song and artist? Let us know down below. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this episode of KnowledgeCo. Subscribe for more content just like this, and be sure to check KnowledgeCo out on social media for all the latest updates and behind the scenes exclusives. Until next time, stay hungry for factuality.